In the world of Chaos Space Marines, Games Workshop gives a lot of love to the top shelf of Chaos Space Marine legions. Death Guard, World Eaters, Word Bearers, Emperor's Children. All of the Space Marine chapters that have a 30K's worth of history and lore and a Primarch. Once you get below that, once you get to the Renegades and Raiders, things get a little squirrely. Digging into the pretty picture section of some of these old school codexes, you see some pretty funky color schemes and some pretty wonky lore. And one of these lesser known Chaos Warbands that I want to take a look at are the Sons of Malice. These guys are barely a footnote in the 3rd edition Chaos book. Their split black and white color scheme caught my eye. Going through my entire collection of Chaos Space Marine codexes, I couldn't find another mention of these colorless Chaos Space Marines. Snipping off the bits of the Chaos Space Marine Legionaries kit, it's a little tricky to customize with the bodies and legs all connected. I think the move when trying to get some variety with Chaos Space Marines is to use other Space Marine kits, like the old Tactical Space Marine box or the Legion armor boxes for Horus Heresy, and mixing them all together. For weapons, this guy can have a bolter, bolt pistol and chainsword, or bolter and big ol' flag thing. I decided to go with classic bolter. I drilled out the gun barrel using a drill bit just the right size for drilling through the side circle cutouts of the bolt gun. Then I found the rest of the bits for this Marine. I found some shoulder pads that didn't have too much stuff on them, and then chose a Space Marine helmet with nice big horns. These don't quite compare to the mega horns found on the OG Space Marine kits, but these'll do. Now if I stick this head on now, it'll be sitting way too low. He'll just barely be peeking out from behind the bolter. I want to add a little bit of height, so I grabbed some green stuff and got to mixing. I stuck a little ball into his neck and squished it down. Now he's standing nice and proud. So who are the Sons of Malice? Well, other than one picture from one book, not a whole lot. They're kind of just a great example of what most Chaos Space Marines are getting up to in the world of Warhammer 40,000. Their chapter master, Anarch Cathal, devised a little ritual for the Sons of Malice to participate in. Once every 100 years, veterans of the Sons of Malice would enter the Labyrinth. Or rather, they were on the Labyrinth and they would enter the space hulk that their ship, the Labyrinth, was now attached to, and they would participate in the trials to become a doomed one, which is not so subtle foreshadowing. Upon entering the Labyrinth, these Marines would never be seen again, but if they were able to brave the horrors of the Labyrinth and emerge on the other side, they would be granted otherworldly powers and sent off into the galaxy to seek their fortune as nomads. Is what they thought was gonna happen. In reality, on the 11th such trial, the winner found himself in the jail cell of the chapter master, along with the 10 previous winners. It turns out that this was all a ruse in order to find the 11 best Space Marines and sacrifice them to the Chaos Gods, but not the ones you'd think. Now, Cathal wasn't trying to sacrifice his own men to Slanesh or Nurgle or Khorne, Neverzinch, but instead trying to bring about a new Chaos God, Malice. Now, did this 1,000-year-long project work? Who's to say? I guess only Sons of Malice players know for sure if he did manage to get Malice into real space. That is what the Sons of Malice are up to in Warhammer 40,000, and that's probably what a lot of the Chaos Space Marines are doing. Just a couple hundred or maybe 1,000 fellas, just doing some chaos shenanigans in the warp. My little doomed one needs a base. I broke out the cork, gluing it down over the base, and then I grabbed some EOB basing bits. These are Grim Battlefield Basing Bits sandbags, available from EonsOfBattle.com. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find our merch, like our new Nick and Jay dice, and is the best way to support us doing what we do with a membership. Each month, members can get a credit that they can use on our new monthly terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. This May, we're delving back into the Hungry Maw with the Infested Colony, a world recently ravaged by the chitinous teeth and claws of the Endless Swarm, a series of ruined buildings crumbling under the weight of hypercharged plant growth and impaled by alien limbs, and shipping containers that have been ripped to shreds or torn open from the inside out. These relics of an alien war are designed with competitive wargaming in mind and an eye for storytelling, matching perfectly with our previous alien hive colony. With this set, you can build a wargaming table dripping with alien atmosphere. I glued down the sandbags over the front half of the base, giving my Marine a little something to stand on and look pretty. His very own tactical rock. After I glued my Marine down, I covered the rest of the cork in texture paste, to give it a muddy battlefield look. Now to get some colors, or rather lack of colors on this guy. I started off with a black prime and then a zenithal of white paint. This will give me a head start for the white side of the Marine, but also make the black armor easier as well. I put some light gray speed paint onto my palette and then put this over the white armor bits for my Sons of Malice. This gives a little bit of contrast to the joints and recesses, and it also darkens the armor from white to a little bit of gray. Then I did the same thing on the opposite sides with some black speed paint, doing his right leg, left shoulder pad, and cutting his backpack and helmet right down the middle. On those shoulder pads, I painted the trim on the white side black and then on the black side of the armor white to keep the black and white scheme going. Now to do a little sketching. This is a value sketch, but also the final color because this guy is meant to be black and white. I painted on lines of white and then came back in with a clean paintbrush to feather it out. I put a little bit of this over the white armor to get it as bright as possible. With those two colors on this guy, black and white, the model is mostly done. Black and white is tricky to paint. It is very striking though. It's about as much contrast as you can possibly get on a Space Marine. I've been wanting to try one of these split down the middle checkerboard colors. Now looking up some reference material for the Sons of Malice, they're typically depicted with golden trim. I think one of the later codexes, must be one that I don't have, has them with the gold trim, but I feel like they don't need the gold trim. Almost all Chaos Space Marines have gold trim. And I get why gold trim would look cool because you've got the absence of color and then you put the color back on through the trim, but I don't think they need it. I like what the original artist was going with the silver paint. I think I can make it work. I grabbed some gunmetal silver and started putting this on, giving his bolter a base coat and then putting this on all of the chaotic trim. Gunmetal is mostly just black and white, but it provides a different finish, so it'll give some interest without stealing the spotlight from the black and white armor. After the base coat, I hit all the metal with a black wash to shade the recesses and then grabbed some Turbo Dork Tin Star. This is an ultra bright silver paint that I like, and I sponged this over the bolter to give it some paint chips, and I painted this in the highest points on the trim for the brightest reflections. Now to finally get some color on this guy, I started out with red glowing eyes. I took some red paint, thinned it down a lot, and flooded this over the lenses, doing a few layers to build up the saturation. And I hit his pupils with some red mixed with white. Then I decided to pick out the horns with some browns and tans to make the head feel a little bit more distinct and important. Now for the symbols, and the Sons of Malice do have a symbol. It's a skull that is half white and half black, which would be very hard to paint, so instead I reached for the old Chaos Space Marine transfer sheet. On here, there are some old school skulls that are slightly wonky and misshapen, which helps them not look so much like the Imperium skulls. Once I had the decals laying mostly correct, I gave them 2 coats of gloss varnish from the airbrush to make them look seamless, and a final puff of satin to get rid of the glossy shine. Every time I'm painting up one of these Chaos Space Marines, it's kind of like I'm doing a test model as if I'm starting a new army. And starting a new army is really exciting because then I get to think, well, how would I put together that army? And these guys, the Sons of Malice, are making me think that I want a lot of boys. I don't want to be running a lot of Legionaries and Chosen. And the way I would want to run those is with Masters of Execution. Masters of Execution are really good because they make your guys punch quite a bit better when they're fighting units that are below their starting strength or almost dead. Now, the way I would get my units there is maybe a couple of Forge Fiends, maybe even 3 with big old ectoplasm cannons. Just 36-inch range, firing shots off, bringing my enemies below their starting strength so that the boys have the best chance of success. The Sons of Malice are actually kind of unique amongst Chaos Space Marines because they like chaos a whole bunch. I've been doing so much learning about the Chaos Space Marines, and most Chaos Space Marines really aren't that into chaos, or at least not into the Chaos Gods. Sons of Malice though, they really like malice, and I like to think each individual guy is fighting his little heart out to bring pleasure to the god of malice. And is malice real? Well, who's to say? Warhammer 40k kind of follows the Tinkerbell rules. If you believe in something hard enough, it can show up and kill you. My little Son of Malice needs the base done and a little extra something special. There's something that's got me really excited about that white armor. To do the base, I started out slobbering on a dark green-brown speed paint over everything, working quickly so I can get it over the whole base and give it time to settle into the cracks. While it was still wet, I also used the clean brush to wipe it off the sandbags to keep these spots nice and bright. Now to make those sandbags pop, I grabbed a brush with a nice sharp tip and sketched on a grid pattern. To give the sandbags a nice burlap texture, doing lots of vertical lines and going back over these with horizontal lines. After that, I grabbed an orangey brown paint, thinned it a lot, and slobbered this all over the ground. Once that was dry, it created a nice rusty tinge to this scene. Now, my Marine is standing pretty, but too pretty. There's not enough on this dapper Marine to prove he's a Chaos Space Marine, so I grabbed my Health Red paint, a transparent red color that looks a lot like blood. I mixed it with a gloss medium to make it nice and shiny, and then took it onto my brush and used my airbrush to blast it with air, which throws the red paint into splatter all over my Marine. This is an explosive process that creates quite the effect, drenching my Marine in gore. And I used a brush of this paint to fix up any of the few places where I didn't like how the blood was pooling. Now that's a proper Chaos Space Marine. The gore adds a ton. Now the only thing left is to hit the rim of the base with 2 coats of glossy black paint. My Son of Malice is done, and I'm so glad I didn't go with the gold trim because I knew I was gonna douse this guy in blood, and I didn't want anything to take away from the red spray of gore all over this guy. Sometimes Chaos Space Marines can look a little loyalist because they got nice heraldry and clean color schemes, but then you just douse it in blood so that people know these are the badder guys. To be fair to a lot of the different Chaos Warbands, a lot of them have pretty okay reasons to be at odds with the Imperium of Mankind. Not so much the Sons of Malice though, they worship the god of anarchy and terror. Not a lot of wiggle room to be charitable to these fellows, but there's a certain level of fun in unambiguous badness. It's been really fun playing around with the different Chaos Warbands, and I'm still searching for the one that feels the most like me and my playstyle. Although there is something to the black and the white and the red all over. These guys are pretty fun. Let me know in the comments below, what Chaos Warband should I take a look at next?